Late in the evening on September 21st, 2024, Tara Dower became the fastest person ever to complete the Appalachian Trail. She finished the almost 2,200-mile trail in 40 days, 18 hours, and 6 minutes, beating the previous record by over 13 hours. I sent her an email several weeks later with the subject line, "Long Shot," asking her to come on the podcast. And I was upfront about wanting to have a slightly different conversation than the ones I imagined she'd be having in the days immediately following her FKT, which stands for fastest known time. And she agreed. Today, you'll hear from Tara Dower, the fastest person to complete the Appalachian Trail. But first, welcome to the Everyday Grit Podcast. Conversations to help you think critically, live abundantly, and endure the everyday. I'm your host, Nathan Hicks, and I'm very glad that you're here. Before we get to the interview with Tara, let's grab some feedback and a review. Today's feedback comes from Catherine Hendricks, who wrote on Facebook, loved this one, referring to episode 18. I've listened to it 5 or 6 times now, and I will listen to it many more. I sent it to friends as well. Catherine, thank you for listening, and thank you for passing it along as well. I think that's how this game is played, and I'm very grateful. Wallace Hutton wrote a review over on Apple Review, and she said this: "A trusted friend suggested I listen to Nathan's podcast, and what a good suggestion it was. Nathan's measured tone of voice complements his well-constructed lessons and takes the listener on a journey where his wisdom, grounded in faith, reveals a solid truth. I found strength where I thought there was none by recalling his words. Thanks, Nathan. I will keep carrying on." Wallace, thank you for the kind words. It means a lot that you listen and that you've taken things I've said to heart, and that's made a difference in your life. I appreciate that greatly. Thank you for taking the time to leave a review. I mentioned earlier that I had a particular angle that I wanted to take when talking to Tara. Despite being curious about the nuts and bolts of her record-breaking feat, I was more interested in the journey to get there, and additionally, the mental and emotional work that she does to compete as an elite endurance athlete. You see, in 2017, Tara attempted a traditional thru hike, but her dream of completing the Appalachian Trail came crashing down when she had to leave the trail after less than 2 weeks because of mounting anxiety that resulted in a major panic attack. She was undeterred, though. She went home and set to work sorting things out, gaining both the awareness and the tools necessary to manage her anxiety. She returned to the AT in 2019, completing a thru hike in 5.5 months. That experience on trail apparently lit a fire in Tara. In 2020, what initially was to be a thru hike of the Mountains to Sea Trail shifted to an FKT attempt at the last minute, and she broke the women's FKT on that trail. In 2021, she launched herself into the world of ultra running, taking 4 first-place female finishes that year. In 2022, she completed a thru hike of the John Muir Trail and set the overall FKT on the Benton Mackay Trail while continuing to progress as an ultra runner. In 2023, she grabbed 2 more first-place female finishes and broke a 20-year-old record for the women's FKT on the Colorado Trail. And in 2024, just weeks after taking 4th place female in the famed Hard Rock 100, Tara set out on her attempt to break the fastest known time on the Appalachian Trail. She fell behind early, something like 100 miles, but refused to give in. Instead, she put total trust in her team to develop a plan to help her make up the miles. And then she committed to doing whatever number of miles her crew chief Rascal said she had to do each day. Tara's enduring spirit is inspirational, and her down-to-earth attitude makes her a joy to talk with. I'm so thankful she graciously accepted the invitation and joined me on the podcast. So without further delay, here's my conversation with Tara Dower. Enjoy. All right, Tara Dower, welcome to the Everyday Grit Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. And congratulations on your victory at Uncle Clyde's. Was that yesterday?
Yeah, that was.
What is that? Just run up the hill and slide down as many times as you can?
Yeah, so you have a partner, and it's like the hill takes about a minute to run up. So you run up a hill with an inner tube. Like you pull an inner tube behind you, and it's up a snowy. It's like at the local snow resort Purgatory here outside of Durango. And so it's all snowy. So you're running up this snowy hill, and you have like an inner tube, and then you go down the tubing hill, and then you pass your tube off to your partner, and you just see how many times you guys can go. And me and my partner Becca won the women's division, so that was pretty fun.
What's that? How long does it go?
It's an hour and a half, just continuous. You're just,
like
I felt like I was redlining. It's the most competitive race I have been in. The most competitive I've felt. Like, yeah, Black Canyon's competitive, but like I've showed my competitiveness at this race because it's like so silly and it's so low stakes. And so there's a little bit of sabotage between me and my friends, you know, kicking of inner tubes and, you know, tripping people, whatnot.
Yeah. That's a good time.
Yeah.
So you moved to Colorado in the fall or since the fall?
Yeah, actually January. So it's now 2 months.
How has all of that been?
It's been great. Yeah, I love it. The winter's really mild here right now.
Okay.
Today I think we're supposed to get a little snow, but we've had like, since I've been here, like 2 snowstorms, and they've been pretty mild as far as what everyone else has said.
Right.
So I've enjoyed it, but not really looking forward to the summer because that means we might have some trouble in the mountains with the lack of snow that we've had in the winter.
I would imagine life's been a bit of a whirlwind since the fall with tons of transition geographically and personally. And then, I don't know, you could speak to it. It seems like, you know, your life keeps moving, but the AT and the FKT is still this big thing that everyone wants to speak about.
Yeah.
Is that a weird dynamic to live in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not really. It's, you know, when I was recovering from the AT and I was doing a lot of podcasts because everyone had heard about it, they wanted to talk about it, like that felt a little daunting, like, you know, being on podcast after podcast, being asked the same questions and talking about it. And I was just trying to recover. And I think I was in also like a weird headspace, like mentally after that. But now, like, I mean, it seems more manageable now. People like talk about a variety of things, especially here in Durango. Like if I do run into anyone, people are also runners, athletic. Not that Virginia Beach didn't have like athletic people or runners, but like it's just the community I've found myself in. So like, you know, they hear about amazing stuff people do every day. Like Kyle Curtin is here and he set the Colorado Trail FKT, and there's Robin Lesh. There's a lot of professional athletes here that are, you know, just as incredible, have done incredible things, just like, you know, the ATFKT. But yeah, to more specifically answer your question, these days I'm not like too tired of talking about it. I look back at that time and I'm like, wow, I really missed that. So if anything, I'm just like, I wish I was back there doing it.
It's nostalgic, yeah.
Yeah.
And the shift to becoming a professional athlete has happened since the AT, correct? Or were you already doing that?
Yeah, I would consider myself 2024. I was a professional athlete because I was being paid. But I had to work on top of that. There was no way I could live off of, you know, what my sponsors paid me. So it's definitely better, and I'm able to fully be a professional athlete now in 2025, which is great. AT definitely gave me that ability.
What's day-to-day look like for a professional athlete?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, just to go into this before, I have noticed that I'm able to like relax and chill out a lot more recently. I feel like I put in a lot of work in like 2021 to 2024 to make this happen. And so I found myself really just relaxing a lot lately. And before that, 2021, 2024, I was like grinding, like YouTube, putting out weekly YouTube videos, I think I was doing, which is hard because you're running. And then I was also working. And I was just trying to like make this lifestyle work. And so I don't know if like subconsciously, like I am a hard worker, but like I've just found myself, like I just started a puzzle in my living room and I would have never considered just sitting down for like 20 minutes to like work on a puzzle.
Right.
So I definitely find myself these days as a professional athlete, like chilling a lot more, which is necessary. Like recovery is such an important factor to being an athlete. You want to recover fully so you're able to work hard the next day and like get the most out of a workout. So it is really important to do that. But, you know, daily life just looks like I wake up. I love the morning, so I wake up pretty early, eat breakfast, drink coffee. You know, I'll try to get my run in unless I have like a workout class that I signed up for. I'll try to get my run in like between like 9 and 11-ish, and then I'll go work out at the gym. And after that, I'm just eating more and chilling.
Was it always a goal to become a professional athlete, or was it more of kind of ticking off these other goals and this is the result of it?
Yeah, I think I was motivated by just doing things. I could hear somebody now saying, get a job, you hippie, or whatever.
Right.
But like, no, I've seen like family members and I've seen like other people of like an older generation, how they've worked so hard. And then, you know, I mean, they have provided a lot for their family. And I'm so thankful that, you know, my dad did that. And, you know, other family members, I mean, I'm very thankful for what they have provided for their community, for, you know, the greater good with what they do. But in my mind, like, I just really wanted to live a life that excited me. And I never had like a career mind. I didn't have a career in mind, anything like that. I just wanted to kind of be out there in nature. And if I could make a living off of it, I thought that would be
a pretty good thing.
Pretty nice as well. And so, yeah, it has always been the goal to, you know, be doing things I want to do, which is be on trails for a really long time. That's what it comes down to. The core of it is just being out there in nature. And also pushing my limits as well, just finding that limit for myself personally. I was going to say something else. What was it? So like sometimes I do feel guilty when I'm like, oh my gosh, I like have this incredible life now. I did work hard for this. I did put in my time at other jobs. Yeah. And also I'm trying to find ways I can give back, you know, through Girls on the Run, through different, you know, fundraisers I do. Because I think there's something special about being, you know, that a person that people, you know, look up to in some way, and, you know, there are eyes on, and then how can I use that platform to, you know, better an organization like Girls on the Run. So I've tried to find ways to do that, so I'm not just feeling like I'm just solely benefiting from all this work I did.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So going back, this desire to be on trails, it started somewhere. And I think from what I've watched and read, the AT was kind of the first hook for you. Is that accurate? Yeah,
it was. And that was when I found out about it. It was 2012, 2013. Okay. So I think I was a freshman in college.
And was it a pretty immediate draw to like, I want to do that?
Yeah.
Or was it a slow burn?
There was. Yeah, I was immediately interested in completing a thru hike in the future.
And then if the math is right, so 2017 was your first attempt. Was that after school? Yeah, I graduated in 2016, went to work and saved up, and attempted a thru hike in 2017. Okay, cool. Well, I want to just jump right in. I mean, there's a lot of information out there on like the nuts and bolts of how you approach hikes and FKTs, and I don't really want to replicate that because it's just done really well elsewhere. But I am curious about like your internal process not just in a hard effort, but kind of the journey of the internal process as well. So 2017, you started through hike and pretty immediately ran into a little bit of difficulty, in that first week, and then ultimately left. Would you speak briefly to just what that week was like and kind of how it wound up?
Yeah, in 2017 specifically.
Yeah.
I was really nervous, but really excited to get out there. And the first 3-ish days, I think, went pretty well. I was kind of surprised at how I thought, unless we try to push our limits, we don't really know what we can do. But I remember just putting these limits on myself, oh my gosh, I can't do over 15 miles. That's insane. And I remember doing 17 and feeling okay. And that was in the first 3 days. So I was doing well physically.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially for first time doing that kind of activity. I've done backpacking before, but being out there, starting a through hike.
Yeah.
And then after the first 3 days, I just was feeling this impending doom and this anxiety. And it was uncontrollable and it was constant. And I felt so lonely out there, even though I had made some friends already and I was meeting people. I felt so lonely and I felt anxious and I felt this impending doom. That's the best way I can describe it. And I think it was the 8th morning, I went to bed, and the night before it had been raining just a little bit. I had, gone to bed at Bly Gap in my tent with the crew, or with, the crew I was hanging out with at the time, through hiking with. There's a lot of people there. And I just woke up with this panic feeling. I had a migraine. I had, I felt like something was sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe. And I was just hyperventilating sort of. And I just, I called my boyfriend at the time, and he tried to calm me down. And I just knew I had to get off trail. It just wasn't I didn't want to be there. And that was so wild to me, because I before that was so in love with the trail, and all I wanted to do was be out there, and I was working. That was my goal. And so it was just a weird feeling, and it felt jarring. So my grandparents don't live too far, so they came and picked me up, and I ended up going home, and I went to the doctor because of that whole chest pain that I was feeling. And he was like, yeah, that was an anxiety attack through and through. So I was my first, I had anxiety in college, but I thought that's just how everyone kind of existed.
Right.
And so then I realized oh, this is actually serious and it's debilitating to a certain amount. So I went back home and tried to, figure out what was going on there, why I was feeling that way.
Was the previous experience with anxiety just a general uptight, anxious feeling? Had it ever manifested in something that came close to what you felt? That evening. Yeah,
it was very physical manifestation in 2017. So I from what I remember, I just had a couple times. One really bad time, I was in college and boyfriend broke up with me, and I had to go to work early that morning at a women's clothing store in the mall, and it's all happy, and you have to put on some sort of face, and somebody called out, and it was me and the manager, and she I remember it so specifically because it was what is going on right now? But I was greeting a customer at the front, a mom and a daughter, and I was trying to communicate what our sales were that day. And in my earpiece, my manager was talking in my ear saying, Tara, don't forget to tell them about this and this and this. And I'm trying to talk to them because you're talking. And then I'm also trying to listen, and it's coming out really I'm getting flustered. And then my vision, it's tunnel vision. I'm just it's closing in on me. And I was like, what is going on? And I think I asked her for like a minute. She said no.
Yeah.
She was like, what are you
Got to
talking-"
make the sale.
Yeah. I was like, she's like, nobody's here. We have to work.
That's awful.
So yeah,
So
there was that one time. And then, you know, the AT was so new because it was like all physical. I mean, yeah, definitely felt it inside my head, but like definitely physical manifestation of anxiety. I haven't felt to that degree before.
Yeah. So then you leave the trail. Is there like this, how did you address it then? I mean, was it like this urgency of, I need to figure out what happened and what to do?
Yeah. You know, if I'm to look at it a little more under a microscope, I think I was really anxious to get back to my comfort zone, which maybe wasn't the best thing I could have done, but it did help me it brought me back to a center, it brought me back to like a happy place. And I felt like that's all I needed. And then after that, you know, when I came to terms, I was like, oh, I'm never going to be a thru hiker. I'm just going to be a section hiker. I'm just going to be doing sections and be a hobby backpacker, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
That if that's somebody's goal, that's a legitimate goal. But for me, I knew that wasn't enough. I wanted to be a thru hiker, you know, from end to end. And I just came to terms that I wasn't going to be that. But then I was like, wait, no, like we can still make this work. Like anxiety, a lot of people have anxiety, and a lot of people actually feel that on the Appalachian Trail. And I'm glad I went through that experience because, you know, I'm able to relate to, you know, I watch YouTubers, some thru hiking YouTubers, and I follow their journey. And like, there are a bunch that do have that feeling of like, I just need to get home. Like I miss my family, my friends, and this anxiety, maybe not anxiety, but just that feeling. So I definitely relate to them a lot, and that is nice. And I can kind of give them my advice. And also I'm an example, like you can go back to the trail and complete a thru hike, but you can also not only the AT, you can also do a slew of other things as well inside this like anxiety or like, you know, missing your comfort zone. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be limiting. Yeah. That language is interesting. In the work that I do, we talk about like comfort zone, growth zone, and panic zone. And you can't grow easily in your comfort zone, but it's also hard to grow in a panic zone. Like you got to find this happy medium where I'm out of my comfort zone, but it's manageable.
I love that.
Versus like, I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Yeah, panic zone. Can't do much there.
Okay, just get me out of here. So then the other language I put sometimes is like closing the gap between where we find out that we're a current version, you know, something about the version we are now. And we're like, oh, but I want to do this thing. And somewhere along the way, we realize there's an obstacle we didn't plan to encounter. How did you end up closing that gap to eventually, you know, go and complete a thru hike 2 years later?
Yeah. I did a bunch of things. First off, like I definitely got into that comfort zone again and started planning. And I just knew what I needed to do to go out there again. And I did work on my anxiety. I worked on grounding techniques. And, you know, in 2017, from the time that I learned about the AT to 2017, it became a goal just to be a thru hiker. And it was no longer about the journey. And, you know, when I watched that documentary in 2013, I was like, oh, the community, the culture, you know, nature and being out there just seemed so appealing to me just to go on this amazing adventure. But then in 2017, when I actually was out there, it was like all about, you know, being a thru hiker, just getting to the end. It wasn't, I wasn't looking at the journey. I wasn't looking at, you know, these small things that, you know, I would otherwise, if, you know, I wasn't in that mindset, I would be enjoying. I was just focused on miles and getting to the end. I just want to be a thru hiker. And so I kind of I tried to rediscover why I wanted to be out there and just focusing on that journey, focusing on like the factors of a thru hike that were appealing in the beginning. And it was just when I finally went back out there, I, you know, brought my partner, and, you know, I knew having that support system would be also really crucial. So there's a lot of factors, and there were days that I felt anxiety, but I was able to manage it through the grounding techniques I learned and completed it in 5 months and 10 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in your experience since then, would you say that dealing with anxiety was kind of one and done? Like it was a season of life and then it's over? Or is it, because my assumption is it's not.
Oh, no.
I hate to ask leading questions, but you've gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah.
So how do you manage it? And how does it show up in your life now?
Yeah, well, in 2020 was a bad anxiety year as well. Probably, second to 2017. And it wasn't due to COVID. It was just, I was starting like an FKT, and I just didn't think my anxiety was as managed. It definitely wasn't managed because there was like some themes of like self-harm in there when I was on this Mountains to Sea Trail FKT. So I really, after that, I was like, okay, I should probably get some professional help. And I did find this great therapist, and we worked on anxiety a lot. It was great. I mean, I don't feel fixed. I feel like I'm able to like before it was like anxiety just was this cloud or like this sheet over my eyes, and I couldn't see anything but anxiety and what I was anxious about. And now it's almost like my therapist gave me all these techniques to lift, that sheet off of my eyes. And like, sometimes it might come over my vision, but like she gave me techniques, different ways to like lift that anxiety. And it feels way more manageable. And, I feel when things come up, when it's like, I have anxiety about really random things. Like, for instance, like parking, where I'm going to an event. What if there's no parking left? And
a big event.
I would ruminate. Oh my gosh, no parking. I haven't even left yet. And I'm thinking about that. This is just an example. But like these days, it's like, well, if there's no parking, then we'll just take it in the moment. There's no reason to like sit here and continually like make myself anxious when we're not even at that point yet. So like a big thing is like staying in the moment and just, doing the best that you can do in the moment. And when something comes up, deal with it then. Don't let it affect your life now.
Yeah, for sure. Is it, do you focus more on trying to figure out causes or just using techniques to manage it and say, the cause is irrelevant?
Yeah, well, I think in the beginning I was looking at causes, but I'm pretty much just techniques, just looking to manage it, because it could pop up at any time. All of a sudden my heart could just be pounding. It's like, that's a physical manifestation. But yeah, it's just really finding how to help it. Triggers, like I wouldn't avoid a trigger. Like I definitely say like being on trail alone was a trigger, and I've learned how to deal with that. Obviously, I've spent so much time on the trails since then. But like I wouldn't avoid that. It now brings me so much joy.
Yeah. Have you seen, so that idea of like, I feel like a lot of places in life, we set out to do a thing, and the AT is a good example, but it could also be like running a 10K for some people. Just, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to be this person. And then when you get into it, you realize you have to confront parts of yourself that you didn't realize you were going to have to confront. Like you thought it was about the planning or the gear or the training or whatever. Oh yeah. And then you get into it and something comes up and you're like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And then you have to deal with it and move on in order to ultimately finish what you set out to do. Is that a theme that you've seen repeated as you've done big endurance efforts? Not necessarily with anxiety, but just in general, like facing parts of yourself that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, I think like endurance sports definitely brings out like new things in somebody, like new feelings or like things you haven't had to confront. Like you said, things you've hadn't had to confront before, good and bad. Yeah. So I think, it's natural for that to happen in endurance sport, but not to the degree of like that anxiety attack. That was very new.
Kind of off the charts.
Yeah.
So then you completed the AT in 2019, and in 2020 you did the FKT of Mountains to Sea, and that was not intended to be an FKT from the start, was it? Was that because of...
It was, yeah.
It was all along going to be an FKT?
Yeah, oh, well, like planning, it wasn't. It was just going to be a through hike. But then like once I planned it and started from the very beginning of starting, it was an FKT attempt, yeah.
And then what hooked you on the FKT? I mean, that's a little bit different mindset and thing than through hiking.
That
FKT, what is it about that has become appealing to you?
I think I like the fact that I can see a trail quickly. Mm-hmm. Like the through hike was amazing. It was so epic. Like I definitely look at my through hike on the Appalachian Trail as like me peaking in life. And like, I work back then, like in 2020, I had to work to make money. So I couldn't spend all that time like I did on the AT. So I wanted to see trails. I wanted to see a bunch of trails, and the Mountains to Sea Trail was perfect because I've lived in North Carolina all over the state my entire life, and I just wanted to see. I wanted to see North Carolina in that way, and I couldn't spend an amount of months doing that again. I at least I couldn't at the time. And so FKTs just seemed perfect to like get out there, see it. And I also felt like I wanted to see if I could be an athlete. I mean, you never know. That was a big saying during the Mountains to Sea Trail was like, you never know if you don't try. So I wanted to like discover, like, can I line up? Can I like measure up to my idols, these people that I've looked up to in the FKT world, endurance sport world? Can I measure up to that and like go further? How much further can I go? Yeah.
There's this, I mean, you kind of hinted at it there. And then I think on the Single Track podcast, it was a sense about you sometimes where curiosity seems to be a motivator. Like I think you got advice that maybe you shouldn't do hard rock and the AT, and you're like, well, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
This was advice from one of the goats in the sport and somebody who has done the AT FKT. So it was very much like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea, but you know, nobody's ever done it. So it was definitely curiosity because I was going out on a big limb because this person who said that was, one of the best.
You should be listened to. Yeah.
Carl Meltzer, if anyone knows him. He wasn't saying that to be like, to demean me, but I mean, he really wanted me to succeed at hard rock, and he wanted me to succeed at the Appalachian Trail. So he was just saying that because he was like, I just want
pick one and make sure it goes well.
I want you to do as best as you can. Focus on one thing.
Is curiosity a consistent motivation for you?
Yeah, I would say, I've said this on, like you said, on Single Track, but it's like, I feel like people limit themselves maybe based on other people's perception of their abilities, or even your own perception of your own abilities. Like we limit ourselves, and I've found myself doing that. And it's like, well, like, why would I just like convince myself of that and not even try? Like, why wouldn't I even attempt to see if I can do this? Like, what am I losing out on if I don't try?
Yeah, give it a go. Mm-hmm. I think it was Single Track as well, and it may not be. I've listened to a handful of different places where you were interviewed, but someone was noting, I think, that at the beginning of his attempt, Carl Sabe, kind of didn't declare victory, but at the beginning said, like, I'm going to get this record. And I loved it because the host asked, is that the mindset you had? And your answer was no. But I liked the contrast because the former is like it plays well like on a YouTube video after the fact. Like I knew I was going to get it before I started, and I appreciated yours. I think maybe because I resonate a little with, like, I don't know. I can account for me. I can't account for all of the other things that could go wrong. Yeah. So it seems audacious for me to say, like, I declare this result.
Yeah.
But does that tend to be how you are wired? Just whether it's lining up for a race or starting an FKT, like we'll see, or are there times where you're like, no, I'm going to get this?
Oh yeah, it's definitely we'll see, because I don't know what's going to happen. It's not over until
Right.
it's over. The Appalachian Trail just specifically is such a long FKT. And like, I really appreciate Carl, but the only reason we can look back at that is because he did it.
Right. He sounds like a fool if he didn't
Yeah,
do it.
like I've met so many people. I mean, maybe like two or three people that are like, I'm going to get the Appalachian Trail FKT. And I haven't heard from them since. I didn't see them out there. I think one like quit like a couple days in. Like, if they had said that and completed it, we'd be talking about that too. But they did it, and that works for Carl. Like, he also said that on the PCT, I think, like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this happen. And that's so respectful. But I also think that comes with an amount of humility. He is a really humble person, but he works. I think it's a side. It's not like he's confident. He is confident, but I think it's like more than confidence. I think it's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this happen.
Right.
It's not like, yeah, I'm better than all these people and I'm going to smash the record.
I think there are people that it works for, and then there are people that emulate what they see, but they haven't done the work that the other folks do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I recommend everyone to go out there and try for, if you think you can do it, like, you never know if you don't try, but, you know, respect the trail, respect the community, and don't look at the trail as a grounds of like this, I'm going to dominate the trail. Like,
Right.
that you're missing out on a very valuable experience, to be humbled by the trail and the community and the mountains.
Yeah. I think that's all part of it is bumping up against something that brings humility.
Yeah.
And then working through it.
Yeah.
What is, whether it's the AT or any endurance stuff, like, is there negative self-talk that you have to keep in check? Like, do you have a negative narrative that creeps in if you don't fight against it?
Yeah, constantly.
And then if you don't mind asking, like, what are some of the things that you tell yourself
that
are unproductive?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm so mean to myself. And I think it works for me because I'm constantly at this place of like, I'm not good enough. And so you got to work so much harder to be good enough. So you better work hard. Like, you're not.
So you're just trying to prove yourself to yourself over and over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just proving it every race. Every time I push my limits, every FKT, I'm proving like, oh, I do belong here, and I do work hard, and I can do this. But, you know, it doesn't work for everyone. Like, that negative self-talk could, I think, harm, like, what I tell myself could seriously harm people, but I've found a way to work with it. My thought is, like, if I'm in a race, I'm usually thinking like, oh, I'm not doing that well. Like, this is, I don't think I'm like ever doing well. I never, I think you're slow. Your pace is good, but like, you could be doing better. You shouldn't have tripped there. You shouldn't have fell there. You're doing terrible. Oh, what was I going to say? I was going to, I think it works for me. Like, I have this amount of anxiety still, but then if somebody passes me, I know to say to myself, like, you worked really hard. Like, you are working really hard, and they deserve this because they're working so much harder. I tried not to let my negative self-talk like affect my performance to that degree, but there is like this line, like, it's like this line between like it being unproductive and productive. And I feel like I've learned how to have productive negative self-talk.
Well, it feels like there's a difference between, like, you say being mean to yourself, but it almost is like you're just not impressed with yourself. Like, whatever your output is, it could be better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot
people
better.
Resonate. Like, so it's not like maybe like, you know, oh, I suck, I shouldn't be here, this is awful. But it's more like you can do better. You got to work harder. Yeah. Which I don't know. There's a fine line, but it seems different than just berating yourself.
Yeah, I've come a long way with that because in, what was that, 2022, I guess it was, or 23, something. I went to Hellbender in North Carolina, and That was a 100-miler, and I was terrible to myself. I mean, I was really, really not doing well. So I know what it looks like. I know what that on the other side of the fence looks like.
Yeah.
As far as like actually unproductive self-talk.
Was that the year that you broke the course record?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, wow,
so it worked, just maybe not.
Well, it worked, but it was...
I mean, it worked to a result, but...
Yeah, it worked to a
result,
result, but like in my head, if you had just been listening to my self-talk, you would have been like, she's walking, she's not running.
Yeah, right.
Walking's fine, by the way. If anyone wants to walk during an ultra, that's completely fine. But like in my head, like I wasn't running, I wasn't pushing hard. I was like really I was not
just
doing
out for a stroll.
Yeah, exactly.
There's this... I don't remember where it was, but you talk about on the AT, FKT, being, you fell behind at the beginning, and there was a point where Rascal said to you, like, I need you to believe, which is an interesting thing. And I guess my question's a couple of things. I talk about this idea of like borrowing confidence that in a lot of places in life, I'm unimpressed with myself, and I don't necessarily have confidence with me in myself, but I trust my friends that have confidence in me. So they'll say like, you can do this, you can do that. And I just say, okay, I still don't feel any more like I can, but I'll go do it. So the question is, did you come around to like really believing internally for yourself, I can do this? Or was it just like, I don't have to believe, Rascal believes, I just have to trust her and do what she says and lay it out every day?
I would definitely say it's the latter. I resonate with that heavily, what you said about like trusting your friends and your loved ones. Like they know my abilities so much better than I know my own abilities. I mean, I really trust them, and they're like, right. Like, my friend JP was so confident I would get a golden ticket for Western States at this last race at Black Canyon. And I was like, no, like, that's not going to happen. My friend Maggie was like, before I left, she was like, when you get your golden ticket at Black Canyon, can I pace you? I was like, don't say that. Like, that's not going to happen. And like, that just continually happens. Like with Rascal, with my mom and Arlie and all these people in my life who trust my abilities or know my abilities better than I know myself. I really have to trust them. And like with Rascals, like it morphed. I knew that she was the boss. I'm just this athlete. She's the coach. She's the boss. She's going to tell me what I need to do. And I need to trust her and I need to do it. And even like, what is the harm if it doesn't work out? Like maybe, maybe the FKT is at risk, but also the FKT is at risk if you're not pushing yourself and trying to do it. Like it's already going to be at risk. So might as well just try until the wheels come off. There's this constant balance that Rascal had to find, keeping the wheels on as long as possible until the very end. How can she push me, and how can we get this FKT? And every day, she would give me an amount of miles, and I was like, I don't think I can do that. And every day I would prove it to myself, like, oh, I can do this, and wake up the next day and do it again and do it again and keep pushing the mileage, crazy mileage. Like after Connecticut, we were pushing so hard. And it was manageable, but it was not conventional whatsoever.
Right.
And I trusted her. That's all I had to do. And that's a big lesson that I learned out there is like, just trust the people who know you. Don't listen to your inner monologue. Like trust those people. If you put them in that place and you trust them, it's for a reason. So
trust them and then take action accordingly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in a recap of leaving the trail in 2017 that there was a lot of angst around the idea of letting people down, like if you left the trail. And so now when I hear you talk about the importance of crew and friends and just how much that plays a role into some of what you've done, how do you better manage like the self-induced pressure of, if I don't do this or if I do this, I'm going to potentially let people down?
Yeah.
Or does it still weigh on you as heavily as it once did?
It doesn't weigh on me as heavily. 'Cause anxiety almost felt like letting people down with anxiety, it just felt like, oh, that's manageable. Like why?
Yeah, like you should be able to control. Like,
yeah, and it's not for anyone that
yeah.
has anxiety. Like knows that that's not how it works. It could be as worse as a debilitating disease or injury. Anxiety it's not, you don't notice it. You notice somebody in a cast, but you wouldn't notice somebody with anxiety unless they're having that physical manifestation and telling you about it. I think I've always had, there's always this like sense of making people proud and being enough for people, like in my life, not just anyone. I don't care about everyone.
Yeah.
It's people I care about and who care about me and who trust me and who I want to make them proud. And there is a little bit of that, but I've been able to manage it a lot more. Definitely been able to manage it. And knowing if I do try my best, like that's all they can ask from me, and they just want the best for me. They want me to be safe. And they want me to be happy. That's what a lot of them say. They're just like my friend Reese and Rascal, my mom, and people in my life. They want me to be happy, and they're just there to support me.
Yeah.
And I'm there to make them
good.
happy. And I'm there to make them proud. It's just this cycle.
It's reciprocal. Yeah. One of the things I like about endurance is it just feels like, I don't know, it's almost a lens to me through which you can see the rest of the world, and it helps the rest of the world make sense. Mm-hmm. So, but I do find it a necessity, like to look for ways to apply lessons learned in endurance efforts back to real life, or to everyday life, maybe is a better way to say it. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, two things. One, what are lessons that you've learned from doing endurance efforts that you find yourself applying? And then the other may be a little trickier, but is it difficult to use your endurance efforts as a productive means versus a means of avoidance? Like I feel like those, it's like a category, like you can go do really well in it, and it's suffering that you enjoy or are accustomed to, and it's really easy. Like that feels good and it's cathartic, and it's one of the areas in life where it's easy to fall into. Like I could do this and get accolades and feels good and I'm good at it, and I could just avoid all of the other stuff. Or you can say like, this teaches me a lot about how I can engage the rest of my life.
I definitely think that's a great question. I'm going to answer the first part, or the second part, because it is more, I'm thinking about it more. But I definitely think I use the lessons I've learned from endurance sports in my everyday life. Like I just like bring up a lot of things and a lot of lessons. Like, I had a pretty tough like relational thing in 2024, and the person I was talking with about it is like a lot of like doom and gloom, and this will never work, this will never be fixed. Like it was a lot of doom and gloom, and maybe that's part of that person's like that's just like what they really thought, and it's just like personal to them. But like I kept bringing it back to like the AT, or bringing it back to like a race or endurance. It's like, well, you never know. Like it could be okay. We don't know. And instead of like, I could see myself in the past thinking like, yeah, I don't know how this is ever going to be okay. Like just going right to doom. And that was a pretty deep question. There's a lot to that. As far as like avoidance, I think there is a level of avoidance with it, and I think I'll discover that will come in time where I start having to like come to terms with that. And I've thought like, oh, what if I get injured, or what if, I can't run as fast, or if I can't just complete endurance sports, like what will my life look like? And I haven't wanted to get there because it's scary.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. A couple things, and this is just me grabbing bits and pieces, but it seems like faith plays a role in your life, just from a couple of things I've seen here and there. And that's just very open-ended, like acknowledging a category. But like, would you speak to the role it plays kind of in the sum of all these parts, whether it's endurance or, I mean, there was a cool thing in your video on the Benton McKay Trail, or Mackay Trail, about bad weather, and you said, help me Jesus or something. And there was a very quick turnaround in the weather and what you'd ask for. And yeah, it prompted just curiosity on my part about
I think
the role it plays. And
I think it like ebbs and flows, like definitely at this time in my life, like I've gone through a lot of like changes in 2024, and like haven't been a part of a community in a while, like a church-based community.
Yeah.
But yeah, faith was a pretty important thing, especially on the AT. I mean, 2017, I remember just like crying out to God and like gosh, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And obviously looking back at that now, it's like, oh, well, there's a lot of things to come. This isn't the hardest.
Right.
And so I feel like maybe like there's been some divine intervention there, for sure. Like definitely on the Benton McKay Trail, that was a really sketchy, probably the closest I've been to like getting in a really, really sketchy situation where I would have had to be rescued. And I think there's definitely been moments of divine intervention, and at times where, I'm in the hole or in endurance, and maybe there's a sketchy situation, or I'm alone, FKT, like I'm nervous, I'm scared. Like I tend to go towards prayer for comfort, because it seems, he's always been there. And it ebbs and flows. Like I would love to find another community here in Durango. It's just so hard. Races are on weekends. And I think that's something that's tough for a lot of athletes if they do have, even just like a community event on the weekends. It's hard to like go to these events, and stay present in the community. And I think that helps a lot, because you have those people in your life speaking life into you. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely had a big impact on my life, and I continue to look towards, God, in those tough moments, but I would love for it to be like a more holistic approach, not just like, if that makes sense.
I think you probably just resonated with most people that listen. Like,
it's like
everyone tends to run in the hard moments, and then
like, I might die now. I might die on this mountain. God, please don't let that happen.
Yeah. So what are you setting your sights on now, like race wise, and you have the podcast is this new? You want to talk about your new venture there? Yeah.
I have Lake Sonoma, 50 miler, and then Western States, which is really exciting. I'm planning a long trail FKT in Vermont. And then nice. I just signed up for the Mammoth 200 miler, which is its inaugural year. So that's going to be exciting. My first 200 miler. I'm so stoked for that.
Is it all in the Sierra?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to check.
I mean, I assume like the mountains behind.
It just looks incredible. I've Sally McRae. She did like that route, and it just looked incredible. But yeah, me and my friend Arlie started a podcast called DNF Diaries, and it's. Have you ever listened to Normal Gossip, the podcast? No. It's really good. It's essentially people write in to this woman, and they tell their stories of like low stakes gossip, and she tells it to like a guest that comes on. She tells them, reiterates like this gossip that's like super low stakes. No one gets hurt or anything. Right. And so we thought like that would be a great idea for like DNFs. So we based it off like Normal Gossip, that format. That's cool. And so we tell each other, me and Arlie tell each other like DNF stories, and it's like really low stakes. We wanted to do a podcast, but we weren't quite sure we didn't want just another running podcast. We wanted to add a little spice, and Arlie's a budding comedian, so it's also pretty funny.
That's cool.
I just laughed the entire time.
Do listeners send in their DNF stories and then you retell them?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Nice. Is there anything you want to end with that you want people to know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think this is a great conversation about the mental side of it. I think that plays a huge role in endurance sports. I mean, there's so many facets to endurance sports, and just being successful in that. And mentality is a huge. We don't give it its proper dues. I think if you can get right in your mind, and if you can control your anxiety, if you can trust yourself and trust your crew, trust the people in your life, I think, at least you're trying your best and you're working hard. And maybe like physical things could happen, and that's fine. At least you've pushed those limits mentally, and pushed back on those limiters in your head, because it's only in your head. So I'd encourage anyone to just like push your limits in different ways, like physical and mentally.
That's a great place to end.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Tara. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Have a good day.
You too.
Well, that's that. I'm so thankful to Tara for coming on the podcast and for being such a good sport to talk about anything and everything. If you want more of a breakdown on logistics and the details of her FKT of the Appalachian Trail, you can just search Tara Dower in podcasts, or check out the Single Track podcast specifically, which is one that she references as a favorite interview of hers. I'd like to make this a conversation between you and I as well. As always, I'd like to hear what resonated with you, what things stood out to you about Tara's story. Our interactions will make this whole podcast better. It'll make me better as a person as well. And it'll certainly help me as I lean into interviewing people in the future. So if you are so inclined, please drop me an email at everydaygritpodcast@gmail.com and let me know what you have to say. This cannot be a conversation without you. If you want to hear more about Tara and what she's up to, you can check out her website at tara-treks.com, and you can find her YouTube channel as well. The next edition of The Reckoning is coming up May 2nd and 3rd right here in Rome, Georgia. If you are interested, get in touch with me somehow. You can send me a message on Instagram. You can send me an email to that same email address I just mentioned, everydaygritpodcast@gmail.com. If you have my phone number, you can shoot me a text. So that interest list is building, and we're about to start filling slots. I would really appreciate it if you'd help spread the word about this podcast and pass it along to someone who you think might benefit from it, or with whom it might resonate. This grassroots effort is kind of the way people find out about it at this stage of the game. If you'd like to follow along, you can follow me on Instagram. My personal account is @NJHIX. The show is @Everyday Grit Podcasts. As always, thanks for listening, and carry on.